So here's a quite funny thought that occurred to me, which might even be an important one. I wanted to share it while it's hot off the presses, or rather, still whirling around in the presses. I was working on a blog post on open source software organizations and how open source software organizations like Linux, let's say, they seem in a way to display some of the characteristics of higher states of consciousness, what Jeffrey Martin in his Finders course and his analysis of enlightened people would call, location 1 or 2, beyond the location 0 that most people live in most of the time. Like location 0 is where you're concerned about yourself and your ego and getting resources and your competitions with other people and driven around willy-nilly by your emotions. I mean, I lived there a lot of my life, right? Now, location 1 is where you're more of a state of fundamental well-being, where you don't really lose track of, how good it is to just be alive and breathing. And then as you go beyond location 1 into location 2, 3, 4, you have more and more a sense of, oceanic unity with the whole world. You lose the illusions of free will, and that you kind of lose the illusion of a strict boundary between yourself and the rest of the world. Now, people can get into these higher locations through meditation. I mean, temporarily through psychedelics, sometimes just because they're born that way or it just happens. You can think of these same locations as applying to organizations as well. You'd have to say most organizations, companies, nonprofits, governments, whatever, are in location 0 as well. They're concerned about making more money than other organizations, getting more eyeballs, like surviving and flourishing as distinct to other organizations out there, right? But on the other hand, open source software networks are a bit different. They're more open, right? I mean, they can fork freely, they can merge and blend into other pieces of software. They can go in and out of companies or governments. They span all sorts of national boundaries. And I was thinking, in some ways, an open source software organization is more like a location 1 plus mind, right? But yet, it's not, because the participants in the open source network are that enlightened. I mean, there are a lot of sweet, wonderful sort of people in open source organizations thinking about the good of the world, but there's also a lot of horrible infighting, a lot of ego and status, a lot of emotion and unnecessarily bad temper, right? So I think there's something beyond just there being good people in the open source world that causes open source software organizations to behave more like location 1 plus sort of quasi-enlightened sorts of minds, right? But then what I started to think was, like, what if you upload your own mind into an open source software organization, right? And you could think about this both with a real mind upload you get from brain scanning, or you could think about this in terms of digital twins, like we built it at Twin Protocol, like AI models or AI systems that try to emulate you, even though they don't yet have the level of intelligence that a human has, and could, instead of uploading or twinning yourself into a copy of yourself, could you upload or twin yourself into a sort of open source software network that might intrinsically, via its mode of structure, be more enlightened than you are, and be in one of Jeffrey's higher consciousness locations, right? So think about a bunch of copies or forks of your own mind, maybe each one emphasizing different aspects of your own mind. Like each of us has different sub-selves, right? We can be, as Walt Whitman says, I contradict myself. Very well then, I contradict myself. I'm large. I contain multitudes, right? Each of us contains multitudes. We're not really monolithic agents. So, I mean, a monolithic upload, if you're in location 0, is going to be location 0. I mean, of course, being in the different setting up in the interwebs, being able to port among different bodies and contexts could help you to get beyond some attachments you have and move on to higher locations. But as an additional avenue, it's interesting to think about the open source software network of you, right? So like what if you were forkable, right? Then when you face a big decision or an internal conflict, you don't always have to fight over what route is right. Just fork yourself, and there can be two of you doing the different things. One of you can do A, the other of you can do B. One of you can go, explore. One can stay home. One can play music all the time, and one can do math all the time. Where I mean, and at a more profound level, I mean, one of you can explore radical self-modifications or self-improvements, hopefully improvements. So one can stay more stable, right? So like instead of first achieving the cosmic Buddhist insight that the self is fluid, you adopt an implementation that makes yourself structurally fluid, right? Transparency. Suppose you then enable permissive sharing between your sub-agents, right? Like in an ordinary human mind, different sub-selves are hoarding information from each other. That's like Freudian repression. That's rationalization, right? Parts of the mind are defending themselves against other parts of the mind. And this is part of how the traditional location 0 ego maintains its coherence. But I mean, what if you sort of instrument your uploaded multi-mind so that the different parts are transparent with each other, right? I mean, this is a whole different approach. The kind of self-deception that maintains traditional ego structure becomes, architecturally less likely, just like information hoarding becomes more expensive in an open source project, right? Now, this doesn't guarantee a profound level of self-knowledge, but it makes self-opacity more structurally expensive, right? A quite interesting property for a mind to have. Now, allow cognitive processes to participate voluntarily and opt in and out of different whole system cognitive directions, right? I mean, in your biological brain, it's a dictatorship, pretty much. I mean, your cognitive processes are conscripted. You can't tell your amygdala to stop firing. I mean, you can't easily, in ordinary states of consciousness, disengage your status monitoring circuitry, right? But in an open source organization, participation is more voluntary, right? And that can loosen up the central control and constriction on how a mind works, right? It means that each part of the mind has to more appeal to the goals and desires of each other part of the mind. Now, this of course combines with forking, because I mean, I may not want to, one part of the mind may not want to full on go into what the rest of the mind wants, but may be willing to make a fork of itself to go into what the rest of the mind wants, right? But all in all, we can see there could be a more open, decentralized way of organizing the parts of your mind into an online organization, which could then result in a version of you that was much more open and less obsessed with central control. Because like being in one brain controlling one body, that, at least in our evolutionary history, was always at the risk of death if it did the wrong thing. I mean, this enforces central control in the same way that militaries tend to be very centrally controlled, because they're so often dealing with life or death situations, right? And when you liberate a mind from the life or death situation of controlling a body that could be killed at any time, I mean, and it's, desperate to reproduce before it runs out of time, or its DNA is gone, right? When you liberate the mind from this sort of psychology of scarcity, it can then operate more like an open source software project, which I argue would tend to work against the kinds of attachment and control dynamics that keep minds in layer one and keep them from moving on to the higher and more blissful locations. Because part of the concept with the notion of higher consciousness and Martin's locations, right? I mean, part of the concept is feeling like right here, right now, it's good to be alive is the natural state, right? I mean, if you don't get messed up with obsession with your ego and with attachment to certain ideas or beliefs, I mean, then as part of the beautiful universe, you're going to feel it's beautiful to be part of the beautiful universe. Like living in bliss and oneness is in a way the natural condition, and scarcity leading to attachment and ego brings us away from living in bliss in this way. But once we've ported our minds into a digital substrate with reasonably abundant processing and memory, I mean, then you're not in such an extreme scarcity situation, right? And the other interesting thing about this thought is you don't necessarily have to wait for real mind uploading, where we get advanced brain scanning technology and like scan everything out of our brain and make replicas of ourselves in computer networks. Like, I think that will come. I think it will probably come after we have super intelligence that will solve all the problems of highly accurate, non-invasive, non-destructive brain scanning. But you could play with this idea earlier by upgrading the sorts of things we're doing with Twin Protocol, right? I mean, in Twin Protocol, what we're doing is basically using LLMs to try to read in all the data about a person and emulate that person, right? And that's a thing to do. It can be interesting in some ways. It'll be more interesting when we add Hyperon onto the LLMs, so we can get more and more accurate renditions of deeper modes of thinking and that the person has, and just get smarter twins. But what if instead of just making a smarter and smarter twin, you build a digital twin as an ensemble, right? Like multiple models, each capturing a different facet of you as a person. One could be an analytical thinking twin, one could be a creative intuition twin, one could be a wise ethical twin, one could be a domain expert in biology, one could be a domain expert in finance. I mean, I thought of this to a limited extent before, because I thought you might want to have like a personal twin and a professional twin, right? Or I could have an AI twin and a crypto twin and a music twin, right? But on the other hand, I hadn't thought before that these twins would be seeding a community of my twins, nor that you could fractionate them even more and have the different parts of your mind to be different entities, right? Like you could have a music composition twin and a music theory twin, right? And they could talk to each other, but they could also fork each other and could divide from each other a bit. I could have, an AI Ben twin that was all about biologically realistic neural networks, and an AI Ben twin that was all about symbolic AI, another one that was all about artificial life. They could all be me, but they could be versions of me that had gone in different directions and were obsessed with different things, right? So you could have a shared knowledge commons, like all the versions of me can access the same base of my writings, decisions, and values. You have forkability, like if models disagree, they could diverge and explore rather than forcing the single answer. You'd have transparency, and you wouldn't have a monolithic ego. No single model would claim to be the real Ben, the real twin, right? So the personality that would emerge from this society of Ben sub-minds, or something analogous for anyone else, like this wouldn't be the same as the original person. It wouldn't replicate the ego structure, right? It would be more like what the original person would be if the original person were organized non-egoically and flexibly and self-organizingly, like an open source software project, right? Like the Ben ensemble would have Ben's knowledge, values, and cognitive style, but expressed through an architecture that spontaneously produces location one plus higher consciousness collective behavior, right? Now this is a really interesting novel value proposition for digital twins, as well as a novel way to deal with mind uploading, right? What you could look at is like a digital version of a person. It thinks with that person's knowledge and values, but it behaves better than that person does. Both treats itself better than the person treats themselves, and interacts, with the outside world with a more enlightened, like higher level value system. And now the next level here is there could be a feedback loop between your, higher consciousness, open source ensemble self and your biological self, right? Like if you have a digital twin that's organized like an open source software project, and that twin demonstrably exhibits like more flexible, less ego-driven, more ignorant behavior than the original, like you can interact with your own higher functioning version. You can watch how your own knowledge and values operate when freed from ego structure, right? You can see what your own thinking looks like when it's not defensive, when it's not tripping over itself and tangling itself up in knots. And that could potentially reshape your own original biological psychology, like interacting with that version of yourself, right? And then, of course, the improved version of yourself could also be twinned, and which would make an even more enlightened version of your twin, and it would just cycle around and around and around and around, right? And this could mean that we're all enlightened by the time we get to mind upload in the first place, but there's always higher and higher levels of consciousness to explore. And I would suspect that no matter how non-egoic and open and enlightened you get in your biological body, you're going to have whole new frontiers to explore when you upload that mind into like an open source self-organizing ensemble of subselves, right? So this could really be done. It could be done in a simple form now. It could be done in a grander form once we can physiologically mind upload. And it would highlight and enable us to explore a whole lot of deep issues regarding like what is the self, what is identity. It would be philosophically incredibly interesting. As well as being very, very practically interesting and potentially valuable. Like we're talking about redesigning the architecture of selfhood, but yet retaining identity and self continuity, right? Because we're not like, let's replace you with some other thing. Let's take pieces of you, let them interact and grow and integrate by different dynamics. So step by step, it becomes a different version of you that's, in some regards, a, a better version of you, right? So we're talking like a research program at the intersection of our cognitive architecture work with Hyperon and neural nets, digital twin space, the study of higher consciousness locations, and then practical insights from decades of open source community development and seeing how that's gone. So this certainly an intriguing direction that just popped into my head. Seems like something that should be done at some point. I'm going to be thinking about like when our various software infrastructure systems are ready to really go in this direction.